Yeah, I know this makes no sense, but the thumbnail popped into my head and I just had to run with it, to be honest with you. Besides, I think it'd be interesting to see how things would play out depending on when William is active. For the sake of this video, I'm gonna say this is set maybe around season 2 or 3 of Breaking Bad, 2008 to say the least. So all of our notable characters are still around. The craziest part is actually trying to even figure out how the missing children's incident still goes off without a hitch in this timeline. I guess we can just say it's a canon event. Also, yeah, Freddy's is just in Albuquerque. Don't ask. I'm gonna start out by just laying things down how I see it. William is still William. He's not replacing anybody in this instance. What this means though is that he probably wouldn't get involved with anyone unless they meet him first. And I don't think that happens unless it involves Springtrap. An interesting direction I thought of to take is that instead of using the suit to hide from the souls of the kids, William actually gets tricked into putting on the suit after it's been rigged to go off with him inside. The perfect person to do this, I think, is Mike Ehrmantrautz. Upon hearing of the murders at Freddy's, he takes action in an effort to keep his granddaughter Kaylee safe. In doing so, he learns as much as he can and finds out that William did it, and he enacts a plot to make him seem like an old man who might be catching on to what William has been up to. Ultimately, this ends with William in the suit as Mike shuts down Freddy's to make sure the missing children's incident can never happen again. And I believe this is a reasonable thing for Mike to do. I don't think he'd do it if Afton's existence didn't endanger Kaylee though. If Afton didn't kill kids, he might actually be safe. We don't have 30 years to wait in this story, so still in the year 2008, or, maybe William is springlocked before Breaking Bad starts, but then it'd still have to be sometime after Mike gets to Albuquerque. I don't really know, that's all confusing. So still in 2008, Springtrap is activated, and personally, I think William would want revenge. He seems fairly egotistical in a lot of appearances, and I think being tricked by an old man would piss him off enough to make revenge his first priority. Here's where we come to a sort of bump in this narrative road though. With the time period we're in now, what level of technology would William have access to? I mention this because in the games the fun times exist way before 2008, but they're also way too advanced for their time. Voice and smell mimicry isn't exactly simple. Also, the guy has an underground lair. I bring this up as I think Afton in this universe could at least have the illusion discs from the novel trilogy, or be capable of making them and something to mask his now foul odor. In case you're still confused, I'm planning to have Afton find a way to traverse in public. This way he could not only learn more about Mike, but learn about what he does. Now I know Mike is very aware, but with the advancements Afton can make technologically, this isn't going to be any traditional bugging or something like that. It'll be something beyond Mike's current scope. As Afton learns more and more, I think he'll end up getting closer and closer to the action. He could use the illusion disc to become one of Gus's goons, for example, finding a way to get closer and closer so he can bring everything down. The reason I see him doing this is because it'll prove that he's superior, tricking Mike from right under his nose in order to take everything and everyone that Afton would think Mike loves. I can't say though that Springtrap could keep this up for too long. While Afton's mind is still intact, he's now a decaying corpse and a robotic rabbit, and I think in time the charade will end. But it makes me wonder what he could do before it does. Now, I'm gonna make a bold statement and say that someone like Jesse is probably an easy target for William to kill and disguise himself as. Now, this doesn't mean he could play the role of Jesse well, but Jesse is almost always in the shitter throughout this entire series. I think that'd make it real easy for Afton to find a moment to strike, and I'm sure he could make it seem like an OD or something like that, as it really wouldn't be a surprise given Jesse's reputation. Afton may be dead, but he's not stupid. Now, William's ability to stay hidden practically plummets here. There's no way he could play a good Jesse for very long. He's just too limited with his current situation, as based on dialogue throughout the series, Afton seems to either still be in immense pain, have an incredibly hard time moving, or both. Jesse's just too exaggerated and energetic for what Springtrap is capable of more often than not. But how much time does he really need to get up to something devious? See, I personally have something evil planned. Something a bit more horror, you could say. And the victim of this horror? One Walter Hartwell White. See, Walter would probably be able to tell pretty easily when something's off about Jesse, just because he spent so much time with this guy at this point in the series. Now, that doesn't mean Walter cares. His level of caring towards Jesse fluctuates a lot throughout the series. Sometimes he seems to truly care, and other times he'd be fine if Jesse just ended up dead. The thing is, though, I think Afton would start devising something on the first day as Jesse, if not earlier. And he's got a lot of time, since I doubt he needs to sleep anymore. I don't think Afton could get away with turning the super lab into one of his gas-based experiments, but I think he could do something similar to that. And again, the Twisted Ones / the Fourth Closet. Now let me lay out my masterful plan. There's two ways for it to start. The more reasonable way is that Afton forces a situation where Walter goes to Jesse's place, where a fake Jesse that isn't Afton is located. The second way, which makes considerably less sense I will admit, is for a fake Jesse to be in the super lab. I say this makes less sense as Afton probably wouldn't have the time to create sentience, or get someone he could manipulate to possess a robot that would use an illusion disc. So, once Walter finds quote-unquote Jesse, who appears all sorts of messed up, Walter would be told very ominously to go and check on his family. In a moment I picture to be similar to Foxy Go 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 from FNAF 2, Walt arrives home to see something like what Foxy sees at the end of that minigame. And Afton could definitely pull this off due to voice mimicry that we know his game counterpart is capable of creating like 20 years earlier. Think of it like Ghostface in Scream 3. Somehow that shit just works perfectly. And after Walt stumbles upon this horrific scene, out from the shadows steps Springtrap, who, in what you could call an act of mercy at this point, puts Walt to sleep for good. Also, we know the suits are capable of withstanding gunfire thanks to the FNAF movie. In case you're wondering about Hank shooting Springtrap ever, it wouldn't work. But also in this case, again in my masterful plan, Springtrap uses voice mimicry to bring all of Walt's family, which includes Hank and Marie. They would have been unsuspecting victims, and Springtrap is rather stealthy when he chooses to be. Look at UCN for example. He's completely silent in that game. Also, as for why Springtrap does this, since I'm sure someone will ask, honestly you could say it's just because he wanted to. He does it simply because he can. He probably enjoys the rush, or at least that's a reason behind why most people kill. It could also fuel him to know that he's able to do this under people's noses. That's another thing that he might get off on. I'm sure there's also other reasons if you really wanted to do a deep dive into William Afton that could explain why he might do this, but I do think it's reasonable. Now, I think with how cautious Gus is, him and Mike would very quickly learn if something was up. If they couldn't tell that something was wrong about Jesse, which they probably would have, it wouldn't take them too long to realize if Walt and Jesse don't show up. Now, I think it's reasonable that Gus catches on to Afton way earlier due to just how meticulous the guy is. But for the fun of the video, we're saying that's not the case. As for Springtrap, the last person he wants is Mike. He killed Jesse to get to Walt, and he killed Walt because he wanted to relive an experience like that. Maybe it's what helps him feel human at this point in his life. Michael would probably go check on Walt and Jesse, likely on Gus's orders, but I think Michael's smart enough to use caution and scope both places out before entering them. And even then, he's gonna be methodical about his approach. He's experienced in situations like this, and it would certainly be off-putting to go to Jesse's house to seemingly see Jesse just laying there. However, he too would hear what Walter heard. Michael naturally goes to check on his family, and as for now, they're alive and well. And that's when he realizes that message was meant for Walter. So that's where he heads next. Michael moves through the house slowly and methodically, checking every room he comes across for anyone who shouldn't be there, until he gets to the room. This sight may not be too disturbing for him, but that's not all, as from the shadows in front of him, he hears a voice call out to him, and all it has to say is, "Hello." He knows that voice, and he fires his gun at the target. However, it does very little. And while we know Springtrap doesn't move around the easiest, that doesn't mean he can't move quickly at all. In a display of vile, ferocious evil, Springtrap catches up to Michael and watches as life leaves his eyes. There's just nothing a normal man could do to beat what Springtrap has become. Now from here, Springtrap would probably go to Mike's family and take them out too. Gus is a possible victim, but that's a much larger scope, and I don't see it happening, quite frankly. Now, let me be clear. Springtrap, with all his book powers, could have simply forced Mike to burn himself alive in an oven. But this is a horror character, and I wanted to sort of embrace that. The scary thing about Springtrap, when you take into account everything Afton has done throughout the games and the books, is that if he wanted to, he could really be the perfect killer. He could mimic voices to lure people, or use illusion discs, or create robots, or a plethora of other things. Because of that, he'd be almost uncatchable, and he could recreate his initial spree almost indefinitely with anyone as his victim. Now, do I think this instance would play out this way every time? Definitely not. I just think this is the most fun and scary way for this scenario to play out. The thought that this unkillable killer could be spying on you without you ever being able to know, and then be smart enough to devise such an elaborate plan, is terrifying to me. That being said though, I hope you enjoyed this video. I got big things planned for the end of this month, / beginning of next month, whenever it comes out essentially. But until then, I hope you all have a super duper fantastic day, and I'll see you all next time.